My first encounter with obsessive compulsive disorder was Nicolas Cage's character in the movie Matchstick Men, who apparently had a combination of OCD and Tourette's syndrome. The jerking motions and vocal outbursts were due to the Tourette's, and the obsessive cleaning and things like locking the door multiple times was due to the OCD. Though we only see these behaviors when he forgets his medication, and otherwise he's a smooth and successful con man. Now, I personally don't have OCD, and frankly, the term seems to be used lightly too often. A lot of people don't realize how serious OCD can be. Lightheartedly saying, "I'm so OCD," because you like to keep your desk really tidy, is almost like saying, "I'm so leukemia," because your nose is runny. What I'm interested in is how the brain of somebody with OCD works, so I can figure out how to deal with a much less dire but very annoying behavior of mine. Some mornings, I'll be 5 minutes away from my apartment and will suddenly think, wait, did I lock the door? I know I just have to rush back and check, or it will bother me for at least the next hour. This happens maybe 3 times a week, and every single time I go back to check, the door was indeed locked. Luckily, going back and checking like this is enough, and I can get on with my day after that. But I was curious, what happens in my brain that makes me do this? And how is it different from someone who has, for example, the compulsion to lock and relock their door 50 times just so they feel comfortable? Well, there are 3 parts of the brain that come into play here. A part of the frontal lobe called the orbital cortex is responsible for detecting when you think you've done something correctly and when you think you've made a mistake. E.T. Rolls, a behavioral psychologist at Oxford University, found that the cells in rhesus monkey's orbital cortex would fire when the monkey performed a task properly and was expecting some juice as a reward. However, when the monkeys performed the task properly as they were instructed but got salt water instead, the orbital cortex lit up much more intensely and stayed lit up longer. The conclusion was that the orbital cortex is your brain's error detection system. In general, the strong firing of the orbital cortex gives you a feeling of something is wrong. After the orbital cortex fires, it sends a signal to another area called the cingulate gyrus, which will make you feel uneasy until you do something to correct the mistake. Then, once the mistake is corrected, a third area called the caudate nucleus activates and acts like an automatic gear shift, allowing you to switch gears, forget about it, and get on with other activities. In my case, I thought something was wrong and felt anxious until I went back and checked on the door. Then my gear shift, and I got on with my day. Brain scans of OCD patients show that all 3 of these brain areas are hyperactive. This means the something is wrong feeling and the anxiety that comes with it are abnormally strong. So even with incredibly trivial imperfections in something like, say, the fibers on a carpet, the OCD-afflicted person feels that a terrible mistake has been made and the consequences will be absolutely horrible. This is why OCD can result in such irrational obsessions like, if I don't vacuum the carpet 5 times, my parents will die. As Norman Doidge explains in The Brain That Changes Itself, what happens in people with OCD is that their gear shifter, the caudate nucleus, becomes extremely sticky. This means that even if the person does something to correct the mistake their brain is detecting, that feeling doesn't go away. Their brain can't shift to the next gear, and they stay very anxious. Most people who have OCD are actually aware of the fact that their worries and behaviors are completely illogical. But since the orbital cortex and the cingulate gyrus are stuck in the on position, they are strongly compelled to repeatedly attempt to correct the imaginary mistake.